Hi, I'm here with Walter Dekeseredy today. And Walter has very graciously agreed to share some of his time and expertise for me. Dr. Dekeseredy is the Deane Carlson Endowed Chair of Social Sciences, Director of Research Center on Violence, and a Professor of Sociology at West Virginia University. And for the Canadians watching this, he's also a fellow Canadian. And Walter, I had to point out the Habs welcome mat on the floor of your office there. Even though hockey season's a little weird right now, I think the playoffs are starting soon, so we have a Habs fan. Walter has published 25 books, 100 scientific journal articles, and 83 scholarly book chapters on violence against women and other social problems. In 2008, the Institute on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma gave him the Linda Saltzman Memorial Intimate Partner Violence Researcher Award. Walter also jointly received the 2004 Distinguished Scholar Award from the American Society of Criminology's Division on Women and Crime, and the 2007 inaugural UOIT Research Excellence Award. In 1995, he received the Critical Criminologist of the Year Award from the ASC's Division on Critical Criminology. In 2008, the DCC gave him the Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2014, Walter received the Critical Criminal Justice Scholar Award from the Academy of Criminal Justice Services, section on Critical Criminal Justice. And in 2015, he received the Career Achievement Award from the ASC's Division of Victimology. In 2017, he received the Impact Award from the ACJS section on Victimology and the Robert Jerrin Book Award from the ASC's Division of Victimology. So that's quite the resume. I have to stop and catch my breath after reading all that, Walter. That's quite the resume. So thank you so much for being here and speaking to me. Walter, let's just start off with telling us a bit more about your research and what are some of the main focuses of your work.
Well, since 1986, and it's about 34 years, I've been working in the area of violence against women. I started off my career by looking at violence against women in Canadian dating relationships. That's back then when we used the term dating, which is not used so much anymore. And then I moved into doing work on violence against women in poor Canadian public housing communities. And I moved to Ohio and was living in a rural area, and there was nothing being done on violence against rural women. Mm. And so I moved into that area and ended up returning to college, what they call college here. They don't use the term university so much, and examining sexual assault, which is very high, and also the rates are staggeringly high here in the colleges, and also been doing this since 1998, the relationship between pornography and violence against women. And I think that's captured my attention for the last few years, because the problem is actually getting worse, which we'll talk about, like, I'm sure, later on.
Yeah. So what do you, you've just described a broad range and breadth of research over several decades, actually. Mm-hmm. If you're able to pinpoint some of the most significant findings, in particular about the links between pornography and violence, what would that be? What's your most significant finding and why? And you also use the term image-based sexual abuse. So let's talk about that as well, please.
Okay, yeah, and that's become very, very compelling, because what is happening, we have what I call the dark side of the internet. We live in a very high-tech society, and what we are seeing is not only alarmingly high rates of face-to-face violence against women, such as rape, beatings, and so on, but what we're uncovering, my research and research coming out of Australia, and I work closely with people there, a very powerful relationship between women being abused online particularly by their former partners, and being abused face to face. There's a strong intersection between the two, especially by ex-partners. And one of the most important findings in Canada, the US, Australia, is that women are at very high risk of being abused when they want to leave, are trying to leave, or who have left a controlling or abusive man.
Wow.
And that, in fact, the risk in Canada, the risk of being killed during the process of separation increases sixfold.
Wow.
And the women at the highest risk of, in any relationship, of being killed or beaten are those who are separated and divorced.
Wow.
And what is happening too is with porn, getting back to porn, what I'm uncovering in my research, and others are too around the world, is that many men who are abusing physically, sexually, psychologically, or abusing their current or former partners are major consumers of porn. And today's porn, you know, we live in what Robert Jerrin calls a post-Playboy world.
Oh,
The vast majority of today's porn is violent. Hair pulling, slapping, painful penetration, anal penetration. In fact, the medical people, if you talk to them, they'll tell you they're seeing a surge in choking and strangulation because that is such a popular theme in today's porn.
Yeah.
And many men are trying to normalize this. So even the British Journal of Medicine and other prominent medical journals are reporting these increases. And also among young people, we're seeing an increase in very serious damage to rectal areas. And what they've discovered from interviewing, you know, patients, young patients, that porn consumption is a very integral part of this. And what worries me now is we have a generation that has completely grown up on internet porn. And we are now uncovering that the average age in which an American boy starts viewing it is 9.
Is it down to 9 now? I heard 11 was the last one. So it seems to be like 13, 11, 9 now, is it?
Yeah, it's dropped. It's dropped, and we were triple checking because many of us in the field, well, we want to be sure. You don't want to throw out, you know, myths and so on, right? You want, and so what they're seeing is this is their first impression, their first exposure to sex, and it's violent. This is the thing.
Well, Walter, I was talking to Melinda Tankard-Reese. Do you know her from
No.
Australia? So she was one of the editors of the book Big Porn Incorporated. I highly recommend. But she travels to schools and speaks. She's spoken to thousands of middle and high school. So like in Canada, like grade 6 to grade 12. And girls are saying like, first sexual experiences and it's right to choking.
Yeah.
Right to choking, or I want to come on your face, or give me oral and I'll give you a kiss, and you know, things like this. And of course these ideas come directly from porn. So just, you made me think of that when you're saying this. This is everyone I talk to is verifying exactly what you're saying, and it's probably worse than we even realize, right?
Just recently a new article came out which wanted to revisit, you know, whether this violent content is in the mainstream. And it is, and it's worse. And behaviorally, we are seeing younger people, and there's been a wave of research coming from around the world. This is not just a Canadian thing or an American thing. This is coming out of Italy. This is coming out of other countries, that these young people are engaging in these types of behaviors. Okay, so we do know that there's violence and it's related. That's a fact. Is it a direct cause? No, but it is.
Talk about correlation versus causation, Walter. I think those are two concepts it's worth spending a bit of time in the context of your research.
Okay, what I found is that, yes, you could, you know, the women who report abuse and the men who report being abusive, they talk about the consumption of porn. However, it's more complicated than that. What I have found, especially among young people for over 30 years, is that the men who are most likely to abuse women are those who belong to peer groups that encourage the abuse of women, that encourage sexism. And what we're also discovering is that porn, contrary to popular belief, isn't necessarily consumed alone.
Right.
You take the fraternity boys at big colleges here in the United States, they watch it in groups, they share
Wow.
it. And if you go to some of these parties where these guys are what they call pre-gaming before the women actually show up. Pre-gaming is like getting loaded before a football game.
Okay.
And when you see them watching these films and yelling at the women in the films, it's pretty terrifying. So what is happening is that many of these men have sexist beliefs to begin with.
Right.
And so porn just helps, reinforce what they're already thinking.
Yeah.
If you think about in the United States, we have a 1 in 4 sexual assault on the college campus figure. Back in '92, when I did a Canadian national survey, coast to coast,
Okay.
representative, we had 1 in 4 in Canada.
Right.
So with alarmingly high rates of violence against women, tells you about our society.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells us that, why would we allow a media that devalues women? You and I were talking earlier, you wouldn't dare show a movie that approves of racism, that approves
pro-slavery or something like that.
Yeah, or even the abuse of animals. You watch a major film, and at the end, there'll be in the credits, no animals were harmed in this film.
Yeah.
So, these guys have been kind of trained and socialized to believe that women should be subservient. And I've worked in this area of violence against women for a long time, and the men who are most likely to be abusive have these attitudes and beliefs, feel that they're entitled, that women should be subservient. I'm sure you've seen this in your practice too.
Mm-hmm.
They're also not isolated, and less than 10% of abusive men suffer from some type of pathology.
Right.
They're very much embedded in these groups, these networks of groups that encourage it. So what I'm finding with young people is that there's a connection between your peer groups, norms and values and beliefs, pornography. In fact, you're labeled, negatively if you don't consume porn.
Yeah. Well, you're making me think, back when I was, I'm 52, and we didn't watch, no one that I knew ever watched porn together. It was still very much of a secretive thing. You looked at it alone. You didn't even really talk about it that much.
No.
But, the kids that I'm talking to now in school, it's like, oh, hey, look at this, look at that picture, look at that website. They do get together in people's houses, and which it seems weird to me, like I just would be embarrassed, but they'll throw on a show or a movie or something, and then maybe be having sex or making out in the room, and like it really is a very different world. So if they're all watching it and they're all mutually reinforcing that choice and that activity and the messages that gives, it just seems like a huge mitigating factor that would be propelling the perpetuation of that behavior, because it's almost like, because I do run into some guys and it's like, they have no idea of why there could possibly be anything wrong on any level with the consumption of pornography, and they're just there because their wife caught them again lying, and then they're going to get a divorce if they don't stop, right?
Yeah. Well, I've talked to young men here who've come to me in my office. I teach courses on violence against women, and there's a module in there on porn.
Okay.
And I've had young men come to me who say, I want to talk to you. I'm watching things that I never thought I ever would.
Yeah.
And the cruelty line in porn is going up and up and up. What Robert Jensen talks about. In fact, if you talk to pornographers, they'll be really upfront with you and they'll say, I do this for money, which they do.
Yeah.
But they'll also tell you that I don't know how much further I can up the ante.
Yeah, short of actually killing someone,
Right.
what else can you do to a person's body?
Right. And you know, the frightening thing is that so many women, you're hearing more and more women, and I'm sure you see it in your practice and your colleagues see it, who experience major dissatisfaction in their relationships. And what we're seeing among young people too is this hookup culture. It's kind of anti-intimacy where you drift from a sexual partner to a sexual partner. And pornography contributes very much to that because the porn, there's no intimacy. But even you go back to the 80s, in what they called features, where there were actual storylines, there was actual kissing, and there may have been romantic music and so on. All today's porn is focused on the pleasure of men. You're going to do what I want.
The gonzo porn.
The gonzo, yeah.
It's just body parts slamming together, basically. There's not even the pretense of any sort of caring or emotion of warmth or love, or in fact, it's almost the antithesis of that, I think.
Well, I had a group, 45 students in my last violence against women class. These were all fourth-year students. And I asked them, how many people do you think at this large university, we have 32,000 students.
32,000?
Yeah.
Woo!
32,000, yeah.
Wow, that is big.
It's big. Our football stadium holds 75,000.
Well, I bet those are some rowdy games, eh?
Yeah. They certainly are.
Wow.
But I said, what percentage do you think of students, undergraduates, watch porn? The boys. Almost all of them said 85, 90%. And then a couple of women said, you know, sir, I have yet to have a relationship with a man here who has not consumed pornography.
I hear the same thing. Like what women, I find it's 30 and under. So that would be the college, you know. I don't even know a guy that doesn't watch porn. Or, you know, I'll have that conversation with them where I'm sort of challenging them to, you know, hey, you could raise the bar a little bit here and maybe be in a relationship where you're saying, you know, one of my personal boundaries is I don't have porn in my relationship. And they look at me and go, well, where am I going to find a guy? And it's a sincere question.
It is a sincere question.
It's not a rhetorical question. It's a sincere question. And I'm just like one of those face palming moments, you know, you got, and you're, well, not everyone watches it. And I just try to encourage them, you know, but that's what it's like.
It is. I'm seeing this too. Like, and you know, I've been working with young people for a long time. I've been in the classroom for 34 years. I've mentored young people and I've seen major changes. That's not because I'm getting older, but because my specialty, my area of sociology, I have to keep track of what's going on in our culture or our economy, and that's what I'm paid to do. And I'm seeing just an emotional distancing. And I'm also seeing how the porn industry has mainstreamed what it's done with fashion, women's fashions, what it's done, like, for example, we're outraged about child porn, yet all these people on the Learning Channel watch toddlers and tiaras, where little girls, 4 years old, are in bikinis and makeup. And
I don't get it.
Well, this is it, but this is how the industry, or 50 Shades of Grey, when that first came out, how excited women were about this. Let's face it, the book's about sexual harassment. This young intern,
stalking, control,
right, and this intern signs a contract agreeing to be degraded. There's nothing romantic about it. There's no Harlequin romance in there. So the industry creeps in, and so what happens is it's not just because they watch porn, but when they're watching, say, the President of the United States make comments about women's genitals, which you saw that famous video.
Yeah.
All these
grab their pussy or something, right?
Yeah. And when you see all of these things that are mainstreamed, and people become more accepting of it, and the industry, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's big business, as you and I talked earlier. It's a $100 billion industry, and here in the U.S. it's 13 billion. That's how much they make, more than Major League Ball, hockey, you name it.
Oh, the revenue stream is mind-boggling. And by the way, I might be wrong, Walter, but Americans love their porn more. They watch more porn than anyone else per capita on the face of the earth. They
do, and they have how they're justified as First Amendment. Okay, First Amendment. That's why the Klan can have a march in Charlottesville. Okay, First Amendment. And it's really weird for being a Canadian here, because Canada has among the strictest hate crime laws.
Yeah.
And I read the Star and Montreal Gazette every day. Every day I subscribe, and so I keep up. And I have my family, I have my daughter and grandson that moved back to Edmonton, and so you see there are some differences, even though U.S. media has a big influence on Canadian media. But the pressure here of hypermasculinity, what you're also seeing is young boys who may not feel comfortable viewing porn are pressured to view porn.
Really?
Yeah.
By their peers, or?
Yes. They're pressured. And that's why what I'm finding in my research, and others are now finding this around the world, that there's the linkage between porn consumption and degradation of women is a peer phenomenon. And then what we're also seeing with young boys, they talk about their sexual conquest. Their sex is not about the pleasure, the intimacy. It's about, are they getting more or as much as their friends say that they're getting? Okay, and then you factor in porn and today's gonzo, every scenario is sexualized. Meeting a professor is sexualized. Going to the doctor is sexualized. Going to your therapist is sexualized.
Yeah.
And so these boys live in this world that they feel inadequate if they can't live up to what their peers say that they are getting with sex. So we're seeing this, what we call relative deprivation. And porn is a very deadly contributor to that. Plus, within, I was joking about how we don't use the term dating, within hookup culture, which is very pronounced in the U.S. college scene. Very much so.
In Canada, I hear a lot about it too, Tinder and Hinge and those different apps.
Yeah. And, so this attempt to move away from intimacy and just sexual conquest. So, and that also contributes to rape. Now you take, at our school here, we have 34% of women reported one or more forms of sexual assault.
34%?
Yep. I did the campus climate survey, and I've published the results in the British Journal of Criminology and Violence Against Women. And the rates are actually going up. And what we're finding is a very strong connection between having peers who are abusive, but also when we talk about image-based sexual abuse, a lot of these young women are talking about how they get dick pics sent to them.
I hear that from everybody.
They agree to having pictures of them taken, and then when they break up, the boyfriends post them on the dark web and so on.
Yeah, sextortion and revenge porn.
Yeah, but we call it image-based sexual abuse because because the motives are not always revenge. Many people do it because they think it's funny. They do it for money. They do it for a wide range of things. So the trend now, especially in Australia and the UK, is to call it image-based sexual abuse.
Okay.
And but the connections are so close. What we're seeing is that women who report being physically abused also report very high rates of online abuse. And what we find now is many people, have you noticed this? Let me ask you this, just your own experience. Have you noticed people don't use the phone anymore?
They don't use the phone to talk, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even answer my phone most of the time.
There you go.
Well, I don't like talking on the phone. Like, I'm just weird that way, I think. But it's, I tell clients, give me your email, because I get referrals and they give me the phone numbers. and no one answers their phone. So I just would rather email them, because you almost get an answer within an hour if you email somebody.
Exactly.
And if you text them, you get an answer in 5 minutes, but no one actually answers their phone. So.
Okay, right. Now, this is telling us something.
What's it telling us?
Well, we're communicating in a much more distant way.
I guess it is a more disconnected.
We are. And so what happens is people sit behind a screen all day long, and they're not really connecting with people's emotions. When you're communicating via text, you don't know how that person feels. You can't see that person's expression. You can't get a sense of anything. So what happens is, if you're sitting behind a screen and much of your day involves watching porn, the other part of your day involves texting and shooting emails and so on, how does this affect? Because what I'm noticing, even with my peers who have PhDs and everything, they said to me, "You're a dinosaur." I said, "Why?" They said, "Well, they'll say, you call me out of the blue." And I said, "Is that a problem?" Well, most people text beforehand. I said, why would I waste my time texting you first and then calling you? So
well, you ever find I'm afraid to call people. It's like I'm interrupting them or something. Like I've noticed that, or I guess now that you got me thinking about it, I think that's something that's happened over the last few years, where you're like, you used to just pick up the phone, right? And now it's like, oh, I don't know. What if they're busy? Maybe I should, check.
Okay, my point, I didn't want to be long-winded, but this has an impact on porn. Because if you look at today's porn imagery, what you talked about, Gonzo, no storyline, a woman's thrown into some room, and then immediate sexual gratification for the man. If you look at how young people communicate, I have this problem teaching now. I say, look, I'm not getting back to you right away.
Yeah.
I email you within 24 hours.
Yeah.
I remember the old days when we had tape recorded answering machines. How many people drove home from work every 5 minutes to check what was on their answering machine?
No one.
No. But you see, so what is happening is there's no sense of emotional bonding. So our way of relating has become one of just, all right, hook up, let's do it now, and so on. And porn helps fuel that, reinforces that. If you're a 9-year-old boy and you're growing up, and this is, even Time Magazine, the cover of Time Magazine, this special issue talks about, devoted a healthy portion of the issue to how a whole generation grew up from start to finish on internet porn. And when you take a 9-year-old who's watching it maybe 2 hours every day, maybe more, by the time they get into college and they get away from home and their parents, and how are they going to relate to young women? Yeah. And that's what worries me.
Well, that's a great transition to the next question, which is new directions, trends, and developments. And let's mention the sex robots and where all that's going. So let's talk about that.
Oh, that scares me beyond belief. And I urge your audience to watch. Now, it's a little dated by virtue of today's technologies. My Sex Robot. Have you seen that on Netflix?
No, I'll write that one down too.
What's scary is not so much the robots, but the men who use them. And they're interviewed and they're asked, why do they use them? I want a woman who doesn't talk back to me. I want to have sex whenever I want. You should hear the men.
Is it like a documentary?
Yes, it's a documentary, and it's about the creation of the first sex robots. Now, today's sex robots, they look like you and me. They're primarily
they're unbelievably realistic.
And there was a show, electronic show, in which one was gang raped at this show, this electronics high-tech show. And as you know, in Toronto, there was going to be a brothel of these dolls.
Yeah, there was. I think it was 2018, I believe, and I showed screenshots of my talks about the page of the dolls. Like, you pick your doll, and you almost got to do a double take that it's not a real woman, like just how realistic they look, right?
Well,
and it was narrowly prevented by one counselor that said no, it's not zoned for this or something. But
yeah, I followed that case very carefully. But what's going to be interesting for people like yourself, Paul, when these things, they're so sophisticated now, I've seen them. They cost about $20,000-$30,000.
You've seen one up close?
No, I've seen them online.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, but you know what? They're being marketed to pedophiles. And there's some legal loopholes there. And just like with cartoons, you have cartoon porns, you know, where
the anime or hentai porn, it's called.
Yeah, but also The Simpsons.
Oh.
Where Bart's having sex with his mother.
What?
Yeah, there's a whole genre of that. Haven't you seen that? Tons of it. The Disney porn, tons of it. And so what happens is, but anyway, my point is, so let's say a wealthy guy buys a sex robot, and you can program it to, you know, simulate rape and whatever you want. And his wife finds out. I'm not having an affair.
Right. It's not a real person.
Right.
I don't love her.
Right.
It's just entertainment.
Right. So it's going to go to that level. What I'm predicting as a sociologist, and this is a very scary thing, what I'm predicting is that the level of porn has, you know, the violence, the cruelty, the degradation, and I'm not speaking from a moralistic standpoint. I'm speaking from what you actually see. Because those women are really crying. They don't enjoy it.
Oh, this is fact. Yeah, this isn't interpretation. This is fact of what's actually happening. Yeah.
And then you take it to another level. You can actually have a robot, and she doesn't age. And you can change her face, and she can do all these things. Because look what artificial intelligence, I mean, even here, you go to McDonald's, there's nobody working there anymore. Right? There's tablets. You go to an airport.
Yeah.
I was in New York Airport. There was maybe one person who drinks. You sat at a tablet.
Yeah.
So
what's personal?
It's back to sex. You have a reality porn where you wear the goggles.
Go ahead.
Research with people very different. Universities will not approve it. Parents won't approve it. There is high school stuff coming out of Italy and other countries. I have seen it. I have seen out of Norway and other, but in Canada and the US, it's almost impossible to do that. So most of our research on young people is coming up out of other countries. But what I think needs to be done, and I was worried about, this may bother some people in Ontario, but I was worried about what Premier Ford was going to do with the sex education. I think sex education has to involve discussions about pornography and healthy relationships. And this, here in the United States, it's almost impossible, because if you do get sex ed, if you get it, basically the mechanics of reproduction, or they scare you.
Yeah.
You're going to get AIDS.
These are all the diseases you could get.
Right. So what happens, I've had parents say to me, oh, I don't want my kids getting sex education. I said, they are. It's called pornography.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do. Like, you can put all the safety measures you want. So we need to talk about this, and we can't afford not to.
Yes.
We can't afford not to, because we have a generation immersed in this.
Yeah.
Like, so deeply immersed. And you know, a lot of us are well-meaning people. We're not ignorant, but we like to think that we're not in favor of porn or hurting anyone. And so we don't see it because we don't go looking for it, but they see it.
Yeah.
And they're encouraged to, like, their culture. This is a new wave, a new culture.
And you said they go looking for it, but you know what, Walter, it's not even that. It's looking for them.
Yeah.
Like, I just deleted 2 more followers off my Instagram. I get at least 4 or 5 a week of just some random woman I don't know, and she follows me. And then if I don't block her, like, I just block them. But if I don't, then I start getting texts, and then it's go to my site, and it's basically some form of prostitution or pornography or webcamming. and I get these 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh yeah.
So it's not, you know, heard of the 3 A's, right? Affordable, anonymous,
Accessible.
and accessible. Well, the 4th A is aggressive. They're aggressively marketing to your children. So,
Well, it's worse now, Paul, because with COVID, which is only going to get worse, especially in this country. In fact, I have no hope at all, Paul, especially when the college students come back.
It's rough down there, yeah.
Oh, it's once the kids come back to university and college, forget it. This is, you're going to see you're going to see a disaster worse than anything that has been seen.
Oh, really? Oh, that doesn't sound good.
30,000 kids. Now think about it. They come back, you can do whatever you want in the classroom, but they're going to go to the nightclubs, they're going to have sex, they're going to share joints, they're going to share drinks, and it's going to go boom. Look, as soon as the bars were opened up. But anyway, having said this, the young people, we have to reach them. And
and why should, so my next question is, and I agree, but why should people working in mental health pay attention to or be concerned about, and we've kind of, I guess, answered this in a lot of ways, but why should we care about the fact that this is available to everybody? Besides what you've already said, I guess, is there anything else you can add?
No, you're asking a good question. Get to the point. No, really, it is. I mean, if I was a practitioner and I was attending a workshop or whatever, I'd want to, you know.
Yeah, give me the bottom line here.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I respect that. Well, if it's over $100 billion industry, as a sociologist, it's telling me that it's affecting millions of people around the world. So it's part of their daily lives. It's an integral part of their lives. And you know, this stuff was created, these big screens. Twitter, by the way, was created by pornographers. Did you know that?
Well, I know 1/3 of Twitter feeds are backlinks to porn sites. I've heard that.
But also the reason why we have Blu-ray instead of HD, DVD is because the porn industry, the porn industry drives us. So, but what happens is, you know, we're trying to do this with violence against women, get hospitals and others to screen. Ask, does your partner view porn?
Yeah.
And screen for it, because, you know, when you get these people as mental health people, a lot of porn users are depressed.
Yeah.
Because they're dissatisfied in their relationships, and they have to, when they're having sex with their partners, they have to run a script through their mind, pretending that their partner is someone they saw. And the depression and the anxiety, the increase in Viagra and Cialis consumption is not a surprise. That's just because we have the grain of Canada and the United States. There are so many young people, as described in cases here in Time magazine, young people who can't even get an erection anymore.
Yeah, porn-induced erectile dysfunction.
Right, but so the mental health, now with COVID, Pornhub, which is, as you know, the biggest distributor, and you know who owns them? MindGeek.
MindGeek in Montreal. Yeah.
Montreal, right? And so what happens is there's been a massive surge in pornography consumption. The research has been published. Pornhub's letting you watch stuff free. And if you look, and I urge the mental health practitioners in your audience to go to Pornhub and look at what the most popular sites are, and you would be floored.
Yeah.
They are scary.
Yeah.
I mean, and ask yourself, would you want your children or your sister or your uncle to watch this?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that troubles me. So when we're thinking of mental health, and I'm biased, I admit I'm a sociologist, but society affects our minds.
Yes.
And when we're thinking about a society where there's such hypersexualization, degradation of women, and so on, it is going to affect how we think. And then with COVID, we're already seeing serious mental health problems to begin with. Depression, loneliness, anxiety, people losing their jobs. As of Friday, millions of people in this country don't have any money anymore. They were cut off from emergency funding.
Wow. Okay.
They predict now that 1 in 3 restaurants in the US will close.
Wow.
So with all that, and then you bring porn into the mix, so someone, it's like, that group you talked about, Fight the New Drug. Well, I live in a state that where opioid consumption and meth is so big because it's so poor, okay, mining's going. Add porn because you need to escape all the misery and depression, and so watch that.
Yeah.
So
there's so many levels and different things that factor into it, which is why I love talking to a sociologist as well, because it's not just, there's bad porn online and if you watch it, it's bad. Like it's just so much more complex, and it ties into economic factors, relational, mental health, depression, anxiety, on and on and on.
Well, this is it, Paul. And this is something mental health practitioners and all health practitioners need to face. We are seeing a big resurgence in sexually transmitted diseases as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The Centers for Disease Control has discovered syphilis has made a big comeback.
Wow. Okay.
And they're connecting it with porn as well.
Wow.
And syphilis of all things.
Wow.
And so the medical profession, which has never really connected that well, except through public health researchers, many of whom are sociologists. But when I start seeing the medical field concerned about pornography, that tells you something.
Yeah.
That they're dealing with health consequences. So if they're dealing with physical health consequences, why wouldn't you be dealing with mental health consequences?
Yes.
Because your mental health is so closely connected to your physical health.
Yeah.
Right? I can't see that separated, but I think one of the things that we need to do in the mental health field is do screening. And in trainings, there may be some, problems that your patients or clients are having that may be connected to porn and we're not picking up on it.
Yeah.
I'll give you an analogy, okay, real quick.
Sure.
We live in COVID, and so when I had fever and chills, I'm okay, I'm clean, but my wife, the first thing she did was send me to the hospital. Send me to
true story, or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No, true story, but I want to tell you, this is related to what the point I'm trying to make. It's a true story. I had the fear of my life. I thought I may have had COVID. I had to wait 2 days for the test. Can you imagine what that's like?
That's a nerve-wracking 2 days.
Well, yeah, because even if how many people really recovered? So anyway, I came back negative.
Yeah.
And then felt good, fevers were away, and thought just maybe a little bug. I went out weed eating, and I came in, and my foot was a little red. 3 hours later, it looked almost black.
Your foot?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then my wife took me to the ER. I had a very insensitive resident look at my foot who said, "That's COVID foot." I said, "No, it's not. I just got tested." And she said, "These tests are useless." So they put me in a room, isolated, and a nurse came in and said, "No, this looks like you were bitten by something." So I went to my GP the next day. He said, "No, it's not COVID. Your second test came back negative. I'm going to send you to a dermatologist." Everyone thought I had COVID. The dermatologist in 2 minutes said, "You have Lyme's disease."
Oh.
Well, they caught it early. I'm good.
Good.
Because most people don't know whether they get it for 2 years or 1 year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so the symptoms were quite similar. Fever, chills. So as a mental health practitioner, you may be making a diagnosis that has nothing to do with what the real source is.
Yeah.
Now, let's take depression. Many addicts to porn are depressed.
Yeah.
So you're depressed. So what, is your job tough? Most people are going to say, yeah. Are you having trouble paying the rent? Yeah. How many mental health people would say, are you consuming pornography?
Here in Canada, almost none.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right? Or divorce. The rate of divorce in the United States is 50%. Psychology Today, which you know that magazine.
Yes.
Online, They did a survey. They discovered that 50% of divorces in this country are related to pornography consumption.
And I think if you do the math on that, Walter, that puts us somewhere around 300,000 divorces a year in the United States. Something like that, like a significant number.
And it's harder to get a divorce here than in Canada.
Right.
So, but that's why I think that's my case, is that there are things that we may not be capturing in our practice.
Yes.
There are things in research that we may not be capturing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if pornography is such a widely used media, it's got to have some significant impacts on our cognitive development, well, especially young people, their brains, how they develop. We know that they don't develop fully until they're what age, 20 or something? You would know.
The prefrontal cortex in males is about 21, I believe. So there's a high degree of neuroplasticity in those teenage years, which means their template is really being stamped with this combination of sex and violence.
And by the way, psychiatrists and medical people, including the neuroscience people at my university, talking a lot about porn and neuroplasticity. That's become a big area in neuroscience research.
Oh, I'd love to. We could get some names maybe later on. I'd love to see if I could reach out to some of those, because I'm quite interested in that, and I think it's very, very relevant.
And when I start seeing this interdisciplinary, people coming together from different fields, expressing concerns, it's telling us that this is impacting deeply. I'm very also concerned, there are other practitioners who are sex therapists. Some of them trouble me big time.
Yeah, I'm a little iffy on they're called sexologists here. I don't know what in the States, but there's a very, the attitude is, anything goes. And hey, if watching porn together spices up your sex life, that's great. And I don't know if you've come across like David Lay and Nicole Prowse and some of these porn. Yes. I don't want to get off on a tangent on that, but I mean, I'm reading this guy's stuff and I'm just shaking my head, and I'm wondering how he still has his license spreading such harmful advice that's really goes against the face of all the research and stuff that's out there. But you know who I mean, David Lay?
And Prowse, very well aware of it.
Yeah, and to the point where they're actively going after, guys like Gary Wilson, Your Brain on Porn, and people that are documenting the hard porn. They're going after them. And then we find out there are, which I suspected for a while, they're on the payroll of some of these porn companies. I don't know if you're aware of that, right? Yes, I am. And that's the other thing too. The dangerous thing is that the porn industry is big business. It's huge. And it has a vested interest in just like the tobacco industry had a vested interest in making people addicted. The porn industry is firmly committed to this. And so the more they can capture people, that's why, people are sitting and say to me, well, look, porn, how can it be such big business? It's free. Well, the advertising and then the embedded things in your phone and whatever, because one young lady came to me and she said, I don't understand it. My partner and I have a very open, honest relationship. And he looks at my phone and I look at his, and I can't imagine all this junk mail he's getting. Yeah. And I looked at her and I said, you're not going to want to hear this. And I said, he's watching porn. Wow, good. Yeah, good. I'm impressed that is where your mind would go. That's also where my brain would go right away too, because cookies and just how that all works. Well, like for some of my presentations, I'll go on not so much porn sites, although I will, but I go through all these different things for screenshots to show. And guess what my feeds are full of now for weeks? All of that sexualized crap, because it's reading, my computer is reading where I'm going and it's feeding me more of it.
Well, the other thing we need to be aware of too when we educate children, and mental health people must play a role in this. Our economy is very sensitive now and tight, and what a lot of employers are doing, they hire what are called forensic IT people, and
Okay.
they'll dig up stuff on Facebook that you deleted 20 years ago or something, right?
Oh, wow.
What a lot of young people don't understand is that when they're, sending dick pics and all this other stuff, it doesn't go away.
No,
And
it's going to come back and haunt you.
in fact, in one of my criminology classes, the Ocean City, Maryland police came, and I was to recruit. They'd hire summer students because Ocean City gets all these tourists,
Okay.
And so, and it's a good job opportunity for young people. And I would always tell my students, look, if you put stupid things on Facebook, Twitter, and whatever, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So the police came and said, look, we're going to go to the student union after we give this talk, and you can come and meet us, but don't even bother if you've put stupid things online. Don't even bother.
Don't even show up. Yeah.
So what is happening is that a lot of people are really, they need to understand that the consequences are quite significant economically, career-wise,
Yeah.
more than just what it does to your brain. Because on the one hand, they're getting mixed messages. On the one hand, they're getting, oh, porn's good and send dick pics and, women should do this. And the other message is, you're going to be screwed.
Yeah.
In the mainstream world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's an age we live in where everything we do is recorded and nothing ever really goes away.
Yeah. And so,
I shouldn't say everything, but everything we post, everything we generate in our accounts really doesn't ever go away. So
the other thing, Paul, and just,
we'll wrap up in a couple of minutes.
We got 10 more minutes, and I want to say something too that needs to be part of our discussions.
Sure.
And the Black Lives Matter movement has raised this: the racism in porn.
Can you explain a bit of that? Elaborate on that.
Yeah, much of it involves what they call interracial, where white men and black women, and the black women are portrayed constantly as hypersexualized. Asian women are portrayed as submissive. And you even see in Now magazine all these ads for Asian massage parlors and everything like this, right? Latina women are portrayed as hypersexualized and so on. And the more ethnic women are in these porn movies, the more sluttier they're portrayed. And of course, African American men are portrayed as these animals, these hypersexualized beasts who rape white women, right?
Wow.
And if you look at the history of the US, African American men received far harsher sentences, including death, for having sex with white women.
Yeah.
The history of slavery and all these things. But what worries me is just how not only are kids getting messages about women per se, but also the connections between racist stereotypes in women. So how African American women are constantly portrayed as, easy to have sex with and nymphomaniacs and so on.
Uh-huh.
So that worries me too. What are children learning about race and ethnicity from porn? So they're getting lessons about, and then of course, here's the other thing I want to throw out. We are seeing a wealth of research now on violence against LGBTQ people. Do you know who has the highest rate of intimate partner victimization? Bisexual women.
Okay. I would have not guessed that.
Okay, here's something interesting. With 85 to 90% of the perpetrators being male.
Do you have a theory about why that is? Because
Yes.
that seems a very odd statistic, but statistically significant.
The Centers for Disease Control researchers have those findings. I do, my survey here, other surveys. What it is porn. What is a common theme in porn?
Two girls and a guy, or two guys and a girl?
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so what happens is men get aroused. The woman comes up front and says, yeah, I like you, but I'm bisexual. So these men their exposure to bisexual women has primarily been in porn. Okay, so many men find a bisexual woman very attractive and appealing. It's exciting by virtue of what they've seen on porn. They're
Right.
social. But when the reality hits, and say a woman says, I don't want to see you anymore, and you're going to go
Rejection, in other words. Yeah.
right, or their masculinity feels threatened.
Threatened by the other woman, maybe?
Threatened by well, why would you want another woman?
Oh, okay, yeah.
And a lot of lesbian women are raped because men will say, I'm going to make you into a straight.
Wow.
But bisexual women have the highest of all the LGBTQ community members. And again, 85 to 90% of the perpetrators are males. And so when you see threesomes and bisexual women as an integral part of today's pornography, connect that with 9-year-olds and up watching this constantly. Also with the theme is that these women are going to be submissive to you and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And you're also led to believe that you should be, this hyper masculine king of the castle.
Yeah.
That's what you got.
So their masculinity is threatened, they lash out with violence.
Yeah.
I'll share a quick story with you, Walter, from my practice that I think you'll find very interesting. So I had a young man who was he was 24, and we had calculated he had watched about 8,000 hours of pornography by the time he had come to my office. So starting at about age 14 to age 24. And while he was watching pornography, his dad was dying of cancer and he was being sexually abused by his stepsister. So guess what genre of porn he was drawn to?
Child porn?
Stepsister porn.
Oh, yeah.
More specific, stepsister porn. And I'll never forget this. I said, why do you think you were drawn to that particular genre of porn? And his answer, and I waited, and he said, I don't know. And I said, why? Like, I just kept pushing it, and I waited. It took him about 10 seconds, and he said, because it made what happened to me seem not so bad.
Yeah. I could see that.
Wow.
I could see that.
Wow. So my point is there's deep emotional undercurrents going on here with, Walter, porn, for the compulsive porn viewers I deal with, it's not about naked people. It's not even about sex.
No.
That was about, porn was about naked people and sex for about the first month when they discovered it. It's not about that anymore. And that's why I think, talking to you and all these nuances and different levels are coming up. Like, we need to understand it's about a lot more than that. And it varies from individual to individual very much so, right?
Well, this is it. And what's worrisome, no, you're absolutely correct. And what's worrisome is that everything has been pornified.
Oh, yeah.
In rural communities, everything, you name it, right? And the cartoon porn is really scary. And, incest is very common, mothers and children. And there's this whole range. But the thing is, everyone is open game. And you talk about how this young man, it made him think it was okay. And we're seeing that with other genres too. Granny porn, grandpa porn, all of this stuff. And when it's so easily available and it's all around you, and you live in this, getting back to what we talked about, Paul, how we don't communicate except through this. We're behind screens and we can hide, like hate groups, they're in their man caves and they speak about this stuff, right? And you start thinking, this is your reality. This is your world now.
Yeah.
And so that's why, a lot of people may seem old-fashioned, but they're trying to get people back into interpersonal communication levels. And that's why we're worried about these professors in the States who are being forced to go back in the classroom with masks. How do you communicate? Never mind COVID.
Yeah.
You're wearing masks. How can you see expressions? How can you, and that's where, anyway. But listen, Paul, it was wonderful talking to you. And
Likewise.
I wonder
Yeah.
if I could get a copy of your video when it's done.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's been great, Walter. I love the back and forth, and I feel like we could talk about so much more. And it's nice to have I feel very isolated at times doing this.
Me too.
And yeah, because like a lot of people don't get it. Not that I'm some super woke, enlightened guy or something, but it just, well, I'm a lot more awake than I was 10 years ago, but just a lot of people don't get it. And so it's just really good to, because you know what I found, like every single person, you're about the fifth interview, we just seem to connect right away over this issue. And these are people I've never met. They're all over the world. I don't even know them.
Yeah.
But the passion, I'm so glad there's a group of people that have a passion and understanding for this. So thank you so much. I'll be happy to send you a copy. I'll probably need to do some editing on it first, just to get all that glitchy stuff out. And I look forward to talking. If there's anything we can collaborate on, or I'm all about collaboration. Please stay in touch. So.
Yeah. Oh, I will, Paul. No, it's good. I mean, we all do feel isolated. There are not many of us around the world. Never mind in Canada, the U.S. I mean, and there's a whole industry that hates us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. All right, we'll be in touch, Paul. So
thanks again, Walter. You have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. Bye.